God for. Just don't have enough time. That's all it takes. Just a moment just to think. When you think, you can't help but think. We preach in the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, the author and the finisher of our faith. To him be glory, dominion, power, henceforth, now, and forever. Amen. For those that have the Bibles, if you will, turn with me to Hebrews chapter 11.
Worship.
Chapter 11, starting at verse 23. I'm going to ask that you all read it to me this morning. We're going to wait till everybody get it. And we're going to start at verse 27. Let us read it together. By faith, Moses, when he was born, was hid 3 months of his parents, because they saw he was a proper child, and they were not afraid of the king's commandments. By faith, Moses, when he was come to years, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer afflictions with the people of God than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season. Esteem the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt, for he had respect unto the repentance of the Lord. By faith he forsook Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king, for he endured as seeing him who is invisible. Amen. I want to talk briefly about parents of faith. Parents of faith. We've been preaching on a series for several months now, questioning where the level of our faith is. Because we discovered that through the scriptures it says that it is impossible to please God without faith. And then he tells us in Hebrews that we must have faith in order to exercise certain possibilities. And out of the Gospels he shares with us that we can deal with the mountains in our lives, that if we only exercise our faith. I don't know how honest are you with yourself, but sometimes faith does not live here anymore. I allow worry to demand and dominate my possibilities that put my faith on waiver. And I've discovered that if I worry, I cannot have faith. And so sometimes I abandon faith and take up on worry. If our children are going to be effective in the community, then they're going to have to see something out of us. And believe it or not, they are seeing something, be it good, bad, or indifferent. They are seeing something. And they can only mimic by what they see. And I thank God for this lesson today, that here we have Moses and his parents. Was in a very difficult environment. Pharaoh, to us, had gone crazy. He had already put out a plague that every young child that was born, male, was to be killed. And the midwives had the awesome task to slay the young men. And all of a sudden, now we see Moses. And we see his parents now delivering their child. What an awful sight to see. Knowing that your child has a very slim chance of surviving. And believe it or not, if you really wake up and smell the coffee, that's what's going on in our society today. Ride downtown and you will discover one of the biggest buildings downtown is the jail. Is the prison that they house our young men in. It's not so much business where they can hire more employees. They spend more time building incarcerated buildings than building universities. And being around my wife, I'm learning more about the struggle in African American colleges, especially that is governed by the states. If they have anything to do with it, they will shut it down as quick as possible. They do not want our children to succeed. They're determined to stop the growth and the success of our children. So the question is, parents, what are we going to do? I know traditionally we have been embedded in our minds that we ought to do all that we can to get them a college degree. And I've discovered that many have gone to college and got a degree and still as dumb as they were before they left. They still don't know how to cope. They don't know how to deal with society. They do not know how to maintain life on their own. But they have a degree. Nothing shows forth the degree. They're not practicing what they studied, even though they stayed in school for a long period of time. But the question is, now we see that society is against us. What are we going to do about our children? The lesson here, we see that first, as parents, we have to teach them how to choose their path. We have to teach them how to choose their path. Now, if you haven't chosen your own path, then it's going to be very difficult to teach them how to choose their own path. Here in verse 23, it says, by faith, Moses, when he was born, was hid 3 months of his parents. The parents was concerned, even at infancy, making sure that the child got all that what they needed. And knowing that the plague is out, that the young male child is to be slaved. The text says they hid. They hid him. Now you got to know, you got to understand tradition, you got to understand environment, what was going on at that particular time. It's different than it is with us today. We have no respect for anyone. We sit around and giggle and laugh at how they demean our president. Come on now. We snicker with the dumb things that they say. And even those who hold other offices in leadership capacity, we allow folk to bring them down. But in those days, whatever the king said, that's what you did. You did not have an option. There wasn't no such thing as disobedient adults. When the king spoke, you did what the king said. Matter of fact, you understood that there was consequences if you would not do what the king said. He can speak death or life in your situation. And so in every time that the king would speak, folk would listen. But not only was the king of great power, but Moses now was in slavery.
All right, yes, sir.
They was hemmed up. They couldn't go where they wanted to go. They couldn't do the things that they wanted to do. They was in a certain location at all times. They was hemmed up.
Yes, sir.
And so it wasn't hard to find them. It was not hard to recognize if they was doing what they were supposed to do.
All right.
And I tell you, it ain't hard to find our children. They ain't got nothing to do. Either in-house playing those games or running around in circles in the street. Because there's no centers open anymore to cause them to use their brain in other ways. So either they're at home eating your food, running your electric up, or they're just running around in circles. Nowhere else to go. Nothing else to do. And so it's not hard for the king of this world to find our children to destroy them. Have you ever asked the question, why is it so easy for us? They place things in our neighborhood that they doesn't place in other neighborhoods. Why is it so easy for them to get 08 100, Old English 100? Some of y'all knew I messed that up, didn't you? One in the back said old E. Drugs is more visible in our community than there anywhere else. And so we as parents of faith have to teach them how to choose their path. When we teach them, then they decide how to direct their direction. Then they don't have no problem daring to be different. So many of us are so common. That's why we're judged the same. I don't care where you go. All of our young men wearing their clothes below their right. I don't care how much you teach them, how much you cry over them, how much you tell them how dumb they look, stupid they look, they still wear their pants below.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So they're placed in the same basket. No one is daring to be any different than anyone else. And if you never dare to be different, you will never choose your direction. You become just a follower, just want to follow the crowd, get along with the crowd, want the crowd to accept you. Then when we teach them the choice path, they'll learn how to discipline themselves for development.
All right.
Discipline themselves for development. We must understand that our children are constantly being developed. And if we don't teach them how to discipline themselves, then when times get hard, they're going to fall out. They're not able to deal with it because they have not learned to discipline themselves. But listen, we'll never teach them to choose a path if we don't see the value in them. The value according to what God sees.
Yes, sir.
For the text says, because they saw he was a proper child.
Yes, sir.
They knew at the age of 3 months old, it was some potential in that child. Now the word proper really means good looking. Now every parent, I don't care how that child come out, can't nobody tell you your child ain't good looking.
Now, in order for the child to stay good looking, we got to plan their course.
Yes. All right.
We got to recognize that everybody don't think our children are good looking. Everybody's not going to fall in love with your child. Everybody's not going to be happy because of your child. And so then, parents, we got to make decisions.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they said they were not afraid of the king's command.
Right.
If you show fear to your children, what do you think your children going to show? If you don't stand up for nothing, what do you think your children going to stand up for?
Right.
They can only imitate what they see out of us. Many parents still today do not know how to make decisions. They think decisions are going to go away. Can I bring it home a little bit? Some of you in some stale relationships. Been in them for a long time. Ain't got to first base yet.
Yes, sir.
Don't see any improvement.
Yes, sir.
But yet, you're telling your children to go after something better. What do you think your daughter going to pursue?
Look out.
It's something about what they see they begin to mimic.
Come on, Pastor.
That's why now it's normal for women to be battered by men.
Look out now.
Because the young women have seen it so long in the household that it's common and they think it's love. He must love me because he's blacking my eye. It sounds funny, but I'm talking about some stale stuff. Procrastinating me. Keep saying they're going to own up to their responsibility. Refuse to go and do what needs to be done. You was part of the fault of bringing the child in, so it's your responsibility to do something. You're overgrown now and still avoiding your responsibility. Stay. What can they tell anybody? Folks look at what we do, not what we say. But then we got to be consecrated in our pursuit.
Right.
You got to be determined. Once you embed it in your children about faith, they ought to see it and want to mimic it. They ought to be so energized by what they see out of us that they want to be a model based on what they see. Look at Moses. It said, by faith, Moses, when he was come to years, now he's an adult. Let me ask you a question. How are your children doing? What are they doing? Have they made wise decisions in their life? Have you prepared them to deal with society? It says, now when he was of years, he refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. There ought to be something our children are not accepting.
Come on. All right.
If they got something on the inside, it got to show up on the outside. And it's something about one of the things that we ought to embed in our children is salvation. Now, I lost most of you all because we're career bound. We're going to do all that we can to make sure they go to school. But not concerned about salvation. I ain't got nothing against school, but I got a problem if they don't understand what salvation is. He refused. He knew who he was.
Yeah.
Do your children know who they are? Have they lost their identity?
All right, preacher.
Have they come to themselves yet? Are you scratching your head wondering what they are? Or what they're going to become? He says, Pharaoh's daughter tied me to the oppressor. And the oppressor have killed many other folk like me. And I'll be a fool to become what I'm not. But there ain't no Jesus down on the inside of them. Ain't no telling what they are. There's no telling what they'll do. They're subject to do anything. He said, now I'm pursuing it because I'd rather choose affliction with the people of God than enjoy pleasure of the sin for a season. He said, I'd rather identify myself with the people of God than with the unsaved. And I scratch my head, why we hang out with more unsaved folk than we do saved folk? Why we can get along with more unsaved folk than we do with saved folk? Why is it that we can relax with unsaved folk and have zero tolerance for the saved? Something is wrong. It may be because of your appetite. Unsaved folk will do anything, say anything, and have no consequences behind their action. But the other problem is we don't like to suffer.
That's right.
We don't like to go through nothing. That's why we got a pill for everything. If the pill don't get it, we will try something else. We do not like to suffer. But then he says, when we show them how to live, then we teach them how to communicate their purpose. How to communicate their purpose.
All right.
He says, now, I'm not going to accept the pleasure of sin for a season. And one thing about, when we think about sin, we only think about it for temporary.
All right.
Have you ever said, I'm only going to do this
one time?
One time? That's only temporary.
All right.
But you find out you're doing it still today. That's why we have to be careful. It starts off as a season.
Yes, sir.
But then it becomes a lifetime. He says, extending the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt.
Yes, sir.
You got to make some decisions. And then you got to communicate. And that's one of the biggest problems with our children.
Yes.
They don't know how to communicate.
That's right.
And I wonder why. Why don't our children know how to communicate? I believe they look at us.
Yes.
And the way we communicate is raising our voice. Yelling out of control. Threatening them that we're going to kill them if they don't get themselves right. And we yell and we yell and we yell and we beat them. We beat them and we beat them. We yell and we beat them. And we wonder what's wrong with them while they're in school. Why are they beating up everybody else in school? Why are they having confrontation with the teachers? They can only repeat what's being demonstrated at home.
Yeah, yeah.
But when they learn how to make a choice, then they will communicate it very well. And one thing about a saved child, he knows that whatever Egypt has to offer is only temporary.
That's right.
But what God has to offer, there's no limit to his possibility. And I may not have a lot today, but soon and very soon, God will supply all of my needs according to his riches. And so if a drug dealer comes to me trying to offer me a world that does not exist, it will not cause me to be pleased with what's going on. Because I know serving the Lord have paid off. And it shall pay off. And so we need to teach our children how to communicate. To tell folk what they're not going to do because it brings shame to their God. I wish we were more excited about serving God than we are about dribbling a basketball. I wish we were more excited about serving the Lord than going out trying to please an unpleasable world. Because one of these old days, time is going to be no more. And faith is going to have to speak in our behalf. And the question is going to be, what did you do with the children that I gave you? Did you train them up in the way they should go? And when they are old, they will not depart. Did you do the things that I told you to do in Deuteronomy? Show them everything, and everything you show them, tell them God created. Did you show him or show her about the creation of God? But God is going to say, did you spend a lot of time teaching them about a dog frying? Did you tell them how I died that dog frying? How they beat me all night long? But I didn't say a mumbling word. Did you tell them so much on Easter Sunday? They was running down the aisle saying, give me an Easter speech. And then Christmas time, they realized it had nothing to do with a Christmas tree or Santa Claus. But it had everything to do with our Savior. Did you teach them that it may get hard on a Friday, but if they would hang on in there to Saturday, something about a Sunday morning, they can rejoice because our Savior got up, declaring to have all power in his hand. We need to encourage our children and tell them you may go through some things, but hold on to God's unchanging hand. But you can't tell them to hold on if you hadn't hold on yourself. You got to tell them that God can work anything out. There's nothing too hard for God. He's an impossible working God. Anything that seems hard for you is smooth sailing for the Lord. I'm trying to help us this day and trying to get our children on the straight and narrow way. Is good for education, but if they don't have salvation, it makes no sense. If they don't know him as their personal Savior, it makes no sense. Don't teach them to be like us. We wait till we get grown, then we want to have a relationship with him. But if they start off early, they can't start and stop practicing, because once they get down on the inside, I'm talking about Sunday school now, you can't allow it to go out without coming on the outside. I'm talking about Bible study now. If you keep on teaching them, they're going to reflect what you've been teaching. So if you're teaching them mess, they're going to reflect mess. But if you're teaching them how to love, they're going to reflect love. Parents of faith. And we got to practice even though we can't see.
Moses now was dealing with slavery and torture.
Yes, sir.
And they held their child, hid him for 3 months. I can see them praying for that child. Saying, Satan wants you. He wants to sift your ass weak. But I'm just going to keep on praying. After 3 months, they couldn't keep him hid. He got him too big. But prayer can go anywhere with him. And as they put him down that little old creek, prayer just started moving him closer to the enemy. And as he got closer to the enemy, he changed the enemy heart. And Pharaoh's daughter looked at him as her child, brought him into the palace. And guess who reared him up? It was his mama. And that's what prayer would do. Sometimes you got to send them away, but God got a way of bringing them back to you. And when you bring them back to you, you got to learn to nurse them. And you can't nurse them without God. You got to keep on telling them, thank you, Jesus, for bringing my child back home. And so when he was raised by his mama in the palace, we see him now standing on his own 2 feet. Now his stepmama trying to bribe him in becoming like her. But he kept on looking at his mama and said, Mama, I don't look like him. Mama, I don't act like him. Mama, I don't dress like him. Mama, I don't think like him. And she said, well, son, make up your own mind. And sometimes in our decision, we got to allow our children to make up their own mind. And he said, well, I'd rather suffer with the God people than carry my name of a Pharaoh's child. And when you teach them how to make decisions, they will not lean to their own understanding. But they will acknowledge him. And he shall direct their path. If we want society to change, then we got to change. We got to make the difference. If you want your children to be delivered, then you be delivered. And your faith got to elevate. And you got to see the potential in that child way before they understand. And you got to keep nourishing it. Now, one of the greatest things that a saved parent could ever witness is to see their children coming into heaven. When God the Son saying, well done. I've seen them go across that stage getting those diplomas. Most of them don't even know where they are. But when you get to heaven, no more Pharaoh, no more Egypt. All we have is our Savior.
Thank you.
And I don't know about you, but it's a blank shame for a parent to be so selfish that they want to nourish their child for salvation. That ought to be our priority. It wasn't a sermon to shout, but it's a sermon to think. Y'all see those children there?
Yes, sir.
You see the potential in them? I watch the choirs often. And if a certain folk ain't in the choirs, you can tell the difference.
Yeah.
It throws worship off. Y'all looking at the choir and say, something is wrong. But every time they get up, I
I don't care who's next to them. Who's out there. They give it naturally. But let's look at the danger. Let's look at the danger. Pharaoh wants them.
Yes.
He won. When the Hebrew boys was pulled in captivity, the ones that they didn't think could help them, they killed them. The one that was going to be beneficial to them, they preserved them. Measure that according to your child. If your child has potential, the devil won't. And if we have not prepared them, then the devil gonna get them. And you can buy them a car, put them in a nice apartment, clothe them from their head to their toes. But if they don't have Jesus, they just a dressed up person. And we're too busy dressing up on the outside. And they have no substance on the inside. The door of the church open. Come by letter, Christian Experience of Canada for baptism. Shall we all stand?
Thank you, Lord.